for thinking that I know you're not sure. Make a long stop, ready or not. I see you, but I need to know more. What you wanna do? Cause I know we didn't dance, but I saw you watching on the dance floor. Maybe at the exit door, and maybe we could talk some more. Oh, yeah. You stand beside me, oh, you're watching me, and I feel like
Greetings. Good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Welcome to another weekly Lunch and Learn.
In terms of business, if you have a dream, go for it, pursue it, work hard at it, because with anything that you want to do, it's going to come hard work. You know, if you don't put the hard work, if you don't put the time into it, it's not going to flourish the way you want to.
Maybe advice for anybody who's looking to start a business, like just do it. Start off small and then kind of expand. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming, but like once you're in it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this long time ago?
Love you. Tell yourself, I love me too. I love you, Omena. Love you.
When you open your heart and your mind, you're opening up to your blessing.
Yeah.
Greetings, and good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Happy Thursday, and welcome to another weekly Lunch and Learn. Today we have with us Dr. Maurice Hinson. He's here to talk about reconnecting with Natural Therapeutics and Integrative, which is an integrative and functional approach to optimal health and wellness. Let's bring Dr. Maurice up. He will be presenting today, so I'll be letting him introduce himself, and then I'll be departing, and he will be giving his presentation. So welcome up, Dr. Maurice. Hey, Dr. Maurice, Happy New Year. Good to see you again.
Happy New Year. Good afternoon. I appreciate the invitation back to speak.
Always welcome back. Always, for me, definitely being in the holistic community, always a welcome for me to see the two bridge together. So I love when you come and talk to us about the holistic side of things and the therapeutic side, and also bring all of your doctor well-earned knowledge to the table, as well as representing a underrepresented demographic. So with that being said, I'm going to let you introduce who you are and what you came to talk about, and also give your presentation, and I'll see you when you're done. All right.
Thanks a lot. So great. Yeah. So once again, my name is Dr. Maurice Hinson. I'm a general internist by training. I spent the first few years of my career as a hospitalist, meaning I took care of patients while they were admitted in the hospital. And of recent, I've launched my own primary care practice, which specializes in the delivery of high-value care. All right. And I'll go into that a little bit more in the presentation. So if we can pull that up, please. All right, so I'm going to be discussing reconnecting with Natural Therapeutics, a functional and integrative approach to health and wellness. Next slide. Once again, Dr. Maurice Hinson. I got my bachelor's in neuroscience at Hopkins, medical degree at Drexel University, and did my residency in internal medicine at New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell. Again, spent the first few years as a hospitalist, and of recent as a primary care practitioner. Next slide. Our practice, MediRootz Medical Group, is a hybrid primary care model. We do primarily telemedicine virtual visits, but we also do in-home visits. Again, we specialize in the delivery of high-value care, utilizing a functional and integrative approach. By this, I mean we focus on the root cause of disease, which is the functional aspect, and we combine Western and traditional medical philosophies and practices. Next slide. So one of the reasons that I branched off and started my own primary care practice is I felt that Western science, Western medicine in particular, failed to incorporate God and nature in how it practices medicine. And as beings of nature, the further we get from nature, the more sick we become. And what I realized is that God gave us everything that we need to heal ourselves. All right. We see this all throughout the scriptures uh, and various religions. And so I think in order to address what I consider to be the root cause of most disease, we have to get back in line with nature. We have to get back in line with God. Our man's greatest disease is of the spirit. All right. And so in order to address the number of ailments that we have and the severity of those ailments, we have to address that spiritual component first. Next slide. The body has an incredible ability to heal itself, but only if we get out of its way. All right. On a daily basis, we're exposing it to toxic air. And it's no surprise why the number one cause for cancer deaths is lung cancer, in addition to smoking. Toxic foods. The American diet, the Western diet is absolute poison. It's toxic, it's trash. And as a result, it's no surprise that the number two cancer death, when you combine men and women, is colorectal cancer. All right. And then I think we do ourselves an injustice by way of toxic thoughts and words. All right. Our thoughts provide the framework for which our physiologic processes operate, and our words put them in action. All right. This is why they say guard your thoughts, for they become words, and guard your words, for they become actions. All right. And then there's this toxic dependency. We're overly dependent on this country's systems and institutions. All right, depending on its jobs and its welfare for money, its agencies for housing, its cultivators and markets for food, its healthcare systems, its hospitals, medical offices for wellness. And we know that anytime that you depend on another man to feed you, you give that man the power to starve you. And I think that's where we find ourselves right now, starving for justice, starving for equity, equality, for good health. All right, so we have to eliminate these things first. Next slide. And the best way to address this is first we have to become aware of the power that we do possess, right? We are divine beings. As I mentioned earlier, we were made in his likeness. And so we possess the power to create and to manifest. And we have to become aware that dependency is virtually self-destructive. All right, next slide. And then we have to hold ourselves accountable. All right, we have to stop blaming the circumstances of our environment and start evaluating the consequences of our choices. And once we hold ourselves accountable and become aware of the power that we have with regard to manifesting and creating things that we want in our life, we'll see that we have the ability to really optimize our health and wellness. Next slide. And again, once we fully realize these two things, we become aware of our power and we hold ourselves accountable. What we'll see is that virtually all disease, chronic disease, primarily is 100% preventable. All right. Far too often, science likes to look for genetic reasons to explain our disease state, but genes account for less than 1% of all disease. All right. It's really our choices and the things that we expose our bodies to that render it susceptible to disease. Furthermore, genes aren't the only things that we inherit from our parents, right? We inherit their lifestyle choices, how they cope with stress, all right? And these elements, these other psychosocial elements, I think have a much more profound impact on the development of disease than our genetic makeup. Next slide. So I'm gonna go in this next segment, going into more or less the essence of our being. Okay, next slide. So the first thing that we have to really understand, and we don't do a good job, by we, I mean the medical community, we need to fully understand that we are electromagnetic beings, okay? It starts with our heart. If you look at the top left here, our heart generates an electric signal. This is how it functions to pump blood through the body, okay? There's an area of the heart called the SA node, the sinoatrial node, where the cells in this particular area are able to generate an electrical charge. And then it sends that charge through the rest of the heart and allows the coordination of contractions, which then push blood in the right direction. Okay. Now, if we look at the bottom left here, what we see is the arterial and venous system. Okay. Blood, oxygenated blood comes out of the heart through the aorta to the arterial system, then returns back to the heart through the venous system, goes through the lungs to be oxygenated again, and then repeats that cycle. Okay. Now, our blood is slightly negatively charged. Okay. So as the blood travels through this closed circuit, because again, it starts from the heart and returns back to the heart. As that negatively charged blood travels through this system, that's what creates the electrical current. Okay. A negative charge in motion is the definition of electricity. All right. So we are electric beings. And for those of you who had to take physics, you recall that electricity and magnetism have an inherent relationship where they run perpendicular to each other. So because we are electric, we're also magnetic. Okay. Next slide. There's also this melanin magnetism theory that was proposed by a scientist named Dr. Ermac. He published an article in 2010 looking at Merkel cells, which are the cells in our skin that detect the sensation of touch. All right. Now, what's interesting is that melanin, when in groups called melanosomes, bind iron. Okay. These Merkel cells, which are responsible for the sensation of touch, contain neuromelanin. When in the presence of magnetic fields, these melanosomes within the Merkel cells will tilt, resulting in increased cellular activity. All right. They also found that when you put Merkel cells within a magnetic detector, you see that it emits its own biomagnetic field. All right. So one could deduce from this that individuals with a greater degree of melanin may possess a greater potential to sense and emit magnetic fields. And I'm going to let that marinate for a second. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please? Again, we also have the power to manifest. All right. We see this scientifically through the placebo effect, where if I have two groups of people and I want to test, say, a medication which lowers blood pressure, I give group A the medication that lowers blood pressure, and group B, I give a mock drug. I give a fake drug, a sugar pill. What we'll see is that in group B, there will be a subgroup of people who will actually experience lower blood pressure, even though they receive the fake drug. All right. This is the placebo effect. And so this shows us that it's not the medication per se that results in the lower blood pressure, but the fact that the person or these people believe that they're receiving the medication, and then their brain coordinates the physiologic response to actually lower their blood pressure. All right. This is similar to why prayer works, right? I'm not very religious, but I was raised Baptist, and they always taught us to pray. And when you pray, you surrender to what you're praying for. Once you put it out there, there's no reason to worry about it any further. And this is a similar response to the placebo effect. When you pray, you're surrendering to the belief of what you're praying for, that thought. All right. And then, we're taught that, once we pray, it's in God's hands. So it's almost like we're thinking that, those changes are the result of some external force. But what if it's the God within us? Because once again, we are divine beings made in His likeness. So with us having the power to create and manifest, perhaps it's us that's drawing in those things that we're asking for, and not an external force, not necessarily the divine creator that's pulling strings and making things work for us. Okay. Next slide. And this sort of brings me into this emerging realm of medicine called quantum medicine. This is sort of the basis of my practice now. And I call it the re-emergence of quantum medicine, even though it's a new field, because our ancestors knew this. Our ancestors knew the importance of energy and the spiritual connection that we have with each other, with our earth, with the universe. All right. It's just that now is being rebranded and tested through the scientific method and called quantum medicine. But this is something that's been practiced and understood for thousands and thousands of years. But essentially, quantum theory suggests that all things are units of energy proportional to its frequency. All right. It follows the law of vibration that all things vibrate. And this is fact. It's a law. It's not a theory. It's a law. All things vibrate, even things that you think are still and non-living, they are vibrating. And because they're vibrating, they vibrate at a particular frequency. All right, and that frequency is proportional to their energy. Einstein told us that energy is neither created nor destroyed, but changed from one form to another. And therefore, energy is this vital or spiritual force that connects all things in the universe. And I see that there's the letters are jumbled at the bottom, but essentially this is saying that quantum medicine provides this scientific basis for the spiritual foundation of our health and wellness. All right. And disease, therefore, is the desynchrony in the intrinsic cellular frequencies of our bodily systems. All right. Next slide. So quantum theory follows essentially two main principles. One is the law of resonance, which suggests that a projected frequency will harmonize and attract energies with the same frequency. So for example, if I have two tuning forks that have the same frequency, if I strike one tuning fork, the other tuning fork will begin to vibrate, all right, because they share the same resonant frequency, okay? It also discusses the living matrix, all right? This is something that modern science doesn't believe in, but traditional therapies, traditional philosophy does. And it's the fact that there's this continuous molecular fabric that allows cellular communication and function. All right. This fabric contains our skeletal system, connective tissue, fascia, the extracellular matrix, and water, especially water. Okay. And we can group some of these traditional therapies. I call it nutritional therapy, and I'm going to go into that a bit, which is inclusive of diet and herbal therapy and hydration, meditation, singing, sound therapy, light therapy. These are all resonant frequency traditional therapies in the sense that they generate or respond or improve the resonant frequencies of our cellular system so that they vibrate at the appropriate frequency for optimal function. Okay. And then there's the living matrix traditional therapies like massage therapy. So that the basis behind this is, again, as blood flows through our body, it's also carrying this electrical field, right? When we are tense, when we're stressed, when we go through trauma, because remember, our bodies hold on to trauma. But look what happens when you're stressed. Your muscles get tight, your neck muscles get tight. And in massage, what massaging does is it causes a myofascial release. Okay. So now where you had prior tension and decreased blood flow, now you're loosening up that musculature and allowing blood to flow the way it's supposed to, thereby facilitating the electrical circuitry of the body. All right. The same is true for acupuncture, chiropractic, yoga, tai chi, Reiki, reflexology, so on and so forth. Next slide. When we discuss nutritional therapies, all right, I'm talking about our hydration status, our diet, of course, and then we can incorporate herbal therapies. All right. Next slide. So when it comes to our diet, first and foremost, this is one of the things that we have absolute control over. All right. We can't control the foods that are introduced within our communities, but we can control the foods that we buy and consume. All right. The problem is we're heavily influenced by the existence of poor quality foods, and they make it accessible to us. It's on every corner. It's on every block, especially in the hood. Like it's hard to find good quality foods. And most of these are acid forming. All right. The American diet, the Western diet is incredibly acid forming. All right. Excessive consumption of acid forming foods results in a low grade metabolic acidosis. Now, most scientists will say, oh, there's no such thing as food causing a metabolic acidosis because our kidneys do an incredible job at filtering out the acids, and our lungs do a good job equilibrating our pH. But you constantly introduce acidic foods to our digestive system, there will remain a low-grade metabolic acidosis, and our bodies are incredibly sensitive to subtle changes, okay? So when the body exhibits this low-grade metabolic acidosis, it results in dehydration, all right? So decreased water. In turn, decreased water also worsens a metabolic acidosis. So there's a down spiraling effect. It results in inflammation. And what we're learning now within the medical community is how much of a role chronic inflammation plays into the development of chronic disease. In fact, we think most chronic disease, if not all, is rooted in chronic inflammation. And of course, disease onset. All right. And I just mentioned high acid forming foods are linked with chronic disease like obesity, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. All right. Next slide. And we need to consume an alkaline diet. And I know this isn't the first time that many of you heard this. You know, we could see Dr. Sebi here. This is what he preached. This is what he taught. You know, and the sad part about it is that they demonized and persecuted and ostracized his brother for telling us the truth. You know, and he knew far more about healing than most doctors know today. All right. And when it comes to alkaline foods, they're mainly fresh produce, fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, herbs. All right. All the data so far shows that alkaline diets are associated with reduced inflammation and significantly better health outcomes. So he was preaching this for, decades ago, and now is becoming popularized and commercialized. But I will warn you that this so-called plant-based diet that they're pushing, these meat alternatives, the soybean-based patties, these meatless patties, these processed meat alternatives, we have to watch out for those as well. Okay, they may be somewhat better alternatives than meat, but still, anytime we touch something, anytime man touches something natural, we decrease its nutritional value. All right. So yes, it may start out as a soybean, and also most of these soybeans are GMO at that. Okay. They're not like the natural soybeans that, the Japanese consume and they live over 100 years old. No, these are GMO soybeans that have been processed with tons of salt and fat and sugar added. So how healthy can it be? So I would be very cautious and really going head on with this plant-based diet, unless you're talking about fresh produce. I'm all for fresh produce. Okay. Next slide. And then herbal therapy. Okay. Herbal therapy is the oldest form of medicine. All right. Dating back 60,000+ years. The ancient Sumerians were the first to document it. It's the use of the entire plant from the root to the fruit. And really, is the irony in herbal therapy being considered an alternative medicine, a complementary medicine, and an adjunct to the standard of care, which is pharmacologic therapy, is that the entire pharmaceutical industry was created based and advanced off herbal therapy. Okay. Ethnobotany is origin, is the study of indigenous people and their use of native plants. And from that came all these branches within pharmacology, which eventually spawned the creation of the pharmaceutical industry, and actually is the source of most of their drugs, if not all. Most of these pharmaceutical drugs are just synthetic derivatives of active compounds found naturally in plants and herbs. All right. Next slide. And then our hydration status. To me, this is the most important. All right, because without water, we cannot live. We are anywhere between 60 to 70% water, and the earth is anywhere between 60 and 70% water. This just goes to show you that we are a microcosm of our universe. Okay. Different areas of the body have different water needs. And what I found interesting is that if you look at this schematic on the right, this picture on the right, you see that as we age, our water content decreases, right? As we age, we also tend to become more sick, right? As we age, we get closer and closer to our transition day. I don't like to say death. Death is permanent. We don't die. We transition, but as we age, we get closer to that point. And so this is showing you the correlation and the importance of water when it comes to our health. And it may seem obvious to you, but I don't think we really fully understand how important water is and the role that it plays in our health and wellness. Next slide, please. I know a lot of you have heard of this whole new thing called structured water. And I had to throw this in because now it's hot. It's all in the news and the media, and I get a lot of questions about it. And they coined it as H3O2. I don't know that to be fact. Chemically, again, I am a man of science. Also, chemically, that doesn't make sense. H3O2. But I do believe that water takes on different shapes and conformations. All right. I think there's enough evidence out there that demonstrates that. There was a Japanese scientist, Dr. Masaru Emoto, who suggested that water has consciousness and that it transforms in shape when exposed to human thought, words, sounds, and intentions. And what he would do is he would say something positive to a glass of water and freeze it and then look at it under a microscope. And here we have some pictures of what he claimed. And what he suggested was that positive thoughts, words, sounds, intentions created stable water molecules. And beautiful, elaborate, stable water molecules. But if you said something negative or exposed it to harmful frequencies, negative thoughts, that it would take on a more amorphous shape. All right. And he was demonized also, just like Dr. Sebi. He was coined a quack and pseudoscientist. They apparently some organization wanted him to prove what he was saying, and he wouldn't do it. So they said, "Oh, well, it must not be real." Or, he knew his stuff, and he said, "I don't have to prove anything to you." So, who knows? But what I will say, and this will come up in the next slide, if you will, please. What I did see in the literature, in the scientific literature, was this study using aquaphotomic, machinery, using near infrared spectroscopy, comparing 440 hertz to 432 hertz and seeing how that changed the shape and functionality of water, right? And what they found compared to 440 hertz, that when you exposed water to 432 hertz, that it increased stability of the water molecules, it decreased water clustering, and it decreased evaporation and solubilization. All right. So basically, it's saying that water exposed to 432 hertz is more stable. And what they showed, graphically, was that it changed conformations. It changed the shape, and certain shapes were more stable than others, which is similar to what Dr. Emoto was suggesting. And so there appears to be evidence for this structuring of water. Again, I can't really talk too much about H3O2. It doesn't sit well with my organic chemistry background, but I do believe that water takes on different shapes, and those different shapes have different energy levels and have different functionality capabilities. Next slide, please. And so that brings me into the healing power of sound. Okay. Most of our creation theories, right, suggest that the universe was created through sound, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and God said, "Let there be light." Right? In the beginning was the Word. What is a word? A word is a sound with meaning, right? Let us make man out of sounding clay. That's from the Quran, right? The Hindus believe that the universe was created through the sound Om, right? That's why you hear them chanting Om when they meditate, right? And so if sound has the power to create, then it makes sense that it has the power to heal. All right. And we do know this to be fact, actually. This is not a theory. For a fact, sound heals. You can tell when you hear certain songs, right, how it alters your emotional state. This is why we have to be careful what we listen to. This is true. The certain forms of music elicit certain behaviors, That's fact. But I do want to discuss these two studies that I showed that I found rather, which looked at how people respond, their stress levels respond to different types of music, right? Because again, or I didn't explain it, but stress is one of the main drivers of chronic inflammation. All right, people who are chronically stressed tend to have higher inflammatory biomarkers. All right, so we see the direct correlation between stress, inflammation, and the development of disease, the same way that we see the relationship between poor nutrition, inflammation, and the development of disease, in the same way we see dehydration and inflammation and the development of disease. Okay. And so inflammation and stress is becoming a big thing. But when they had a group listen to 432 hertz and compared that to a group that listened to 440 hertz, they found that the 432 hertz group showed significantly reduced self-reported anxiety, reduced blood pressure, and reduced heart rate. Now, in this particular study, they had 54 subjects. So not that many, but enough to show statistical significance. All right. Similarly, in this study, looking at the effect of 528 hertz compared to 440 hertz, they found that, there's a typo there, it's supposed to be 528 hertz, significantly reduced cortisol levels and significantly increased oxytocin levels, which is the love hormone. All right. And you may ask yourself, why do they keep comparing it to 440 hertz? Well, currently 440 hertz is the standard tuning for all of our instruments. All right. And that was actually changed, I believe in the 50s or 60s, from 432 hertz. All right. So we went from a frequency, which we showed, which improves stress levels, to a frequency that doesn't. And so this is one example of the healing power of sound. And on the left, I included the 9 solfeggio frequencies. So these are ancient frequencies. All right. And over the years, over time, they found that certain frequencies have certain functionalities to them. Like 174 seems to relieve pain. All right. 528 is thought to repair DNA, which may make sense given its role in reducing stress and inflammation that we just showed just now. So there appears to be some truth behind these ancient frequencies. Next slide, please. And here I'm giving examples of how frequencies are being used in modern science today. All right, a lot of research is being done on pulse electromagnetic fields. All right, and their ability to help repair bones that went unhealed for months, years. Looking at these frequencies to reduce pain. All right, to decrease cancer progression. Right? They're looking at frequencies and their therapeutic benefit now. And what I didn't include in this presentation for the sake of time, there was a scientist named Dr. Royal Rife. who claimed to have been able to cure cancer, all right, through frequencies. He created his own microscope, which allowed viewing of live microbes and would introduce certain frequencies of light and said, and showed that each organism had a unique frequency which was lethal to it. Okay. And so, of course, you know, all of his work has been destroyed and he's been regarded as a quack. And there are all these rife machines that make all these claims. And, you know, it appears to be bogus. But what he proposed and what he suggested and what I believe he actually discovered is fact. You know, because everything is energy, because everything vibrates, it makes sense that we may be able to introduce a vibratory signal that may kill a microbe. All right. And so we have to start understanding and start incorporating these different therapies. Next slide, please. And this, I just add, you know, just to sort of summarize everything, getting to the root of the problem. Again, I like to practice functional medicine where we address the root cause and not just symptom management, which is what conventional medicine does, unfortunately. And it just goes through what I discussed already. All right. Eliminating toxic thoughts and words. I didn't talk about sleep, which is incredibly important. I mean, we can give a whole hour-long presentation about sleep itself. Sleep is the reparative and restorative element of our existence. All right. But we do a horrible job in setting up for quality sleep with all this caffeine, you know, since the rise of Starbucks and all these other caffeine shops, you know, people are drinking 2-3 cups a day. And, you know, it's impeding quality sleep, nighttime screen time. So look, you know, our brains, when we sleep, the frequency of our brain waves decrease. But if we're actively engaged in watching something, reading something on our TV or our tablets or iPhones or whatever, we're throwing off those frequencies. All right. It's not able to settle down the way it's supposed to. So we need to allow some time before you go to sleep and you lay down. Okay. I suggest at least an hour, if not 2-3 hours prior to going to sleep. Removing electrical appliances out the bedroom. All right. TVs, radios, your laptop, your phone. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, we receive and we're sensitive to frequencies. Right. We talked about that melanin magnetism theory. It seems pretty plausible that that's a real thing. And so we have to be mindful of the electromagnetic frequencies that we surround ourselves with. Okay. And then there's the late meals and snacking. And this is just from a practical standpoint. If your body is expending energy digesting food, then it's not utilizing that energy to repair and restore the rest of the body. Okay. There's only a finite amount of energy that your body uses at any point in time. Eliminating the toxic foods. All right. Any patient that comes to see me, I tell them I have 2 hard stops. You have to stop dairy. You have to stop red meat. We got to do it out the gate. We can work on the rest of the things, but that's a hard stop because I think these are easier things to eliminate. All right. Because there are other good options. Dairy is not natural for people of African and Asian descent. This is why up to 75 to 90% of Black and Asian people are lactose intolerant. All right. All that bloating and gas and diarrhea that you get when you drink milk, or ice cream, or cheese, that's not normal. All right. That's telling you something. That means you shouldn't be eating it. All right. And lactose intolerance is not a benign thing. That's an inflammatory process. And again, chronic inflammation breeds disease. All right. You'll start to have digestive issues and systemic issues. All right. So leave the dairy alone. And then incorporating more holistic care. Okay. I like to call it positive intentionality, you know, setting goals. And it's not just setting goals. You kind of have to imagine yourself having already achieved it. Right. And when you listen to people like Muhammad Ali, you know, he called himself the greatest of all time. And eventually he believed that he was the greatest before he became the greatest. Right. Michael Jordan talks about every shot that he takes, he imagined it going in. It wasn't just like, oh, I hope it goes in. It was like, nah, it went in, you know. And I think when you do that, you set up and you start to draw in the elements that make what you want actually happen. So that's what I mean by positive intentionality. Natural sleep aids, sound, grounding. I like herbal teas. You know, you have your chamomile and valerian root, ashwagandha. You know, there's a number of different ones. Melatonin, I'm not a fan of. Actually, that to me is a placebo. All right. I don't think it's the melatonin that's making you go to sleep. I think it's the idea of you believing in the melatonin, like I talked about, that's actually facilitating your sleep. And again, the energy therapies. All right. We talked about it. Next slide, please, because I think I have a list of energy therapies again. So at some point, slowly incorporate these things into your life. All right. Meditation is free. All right. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, you can go on YouTube and find a video and do that, 10, 15 minutes out the day. All right. So there are cheap, relatively cheap ways that you can incorporate these incredibly powerful healing therapies. Okay. Next slide. And I believe this is the last slide, but this is just what I suggest, as a start. All right. You want to know what the first step you can make in order to, improve your health. It starts with engage in primary care. Don't wait until you have such severe disease that the only place that they can care for you is the emergency department or in the hospital. The hospital is not where you want to receive your general medical care. It's not. So let's address the issue before it becomes an issue. All right. Let's prevent disease. If we prevent disease, we won't have to treat and suffer from it. All right. So engage with primary care. Partner with the provider that focuses on high value care. That's a unshameless plug. Know the state of your health. Know your numbers. Know your blood pressure. Know your cholesterol levels, your A1C. Know what it means. Know how often you need to get it checked based on your numbers. All right. That's the first step in creating a system of accountability. You have to know, you have to be aware of that there's an issue before you can address the issue, right? Create a holistic wellness plan. And I can't understate this enough. I understand why my colleagues are quick to prescribe pills because that's how we're educated. We're conditioned to do that. Don't blame them. Trust me, there are good people who go on to become doctors and want to do the right thing, but we're trained and educated in a horrible way of executing what our desire is, which is to help people. Most of my colleagues, they genuinely want to help people, but we're educated in a manner that is not conducive to that. The healthcare system is not conducive to actually helping people, unfortunately. It's a system that exploits sickness for financial gain. And I'm sure you are all aware of that. And so that's why I say we have to reclaim our independence, our medical independence. Stop being so dependent on this system for your health and wellness. You can take control of that before it becomes a problem. And then the most important thing is develop a system of accountability. And this one takes a little bit of work. I'll admit it. Not every brother has, a lady or a wife that gets on his nerve to go to the hospital and get checkups. And, this is why married men live longer, and I understand that. But we have to develop some system of accountability. Some people get life coaches if you can afford it. If you've got siblings, somehow your provider, your healthcare provider, maybe you'll find one that's more willing to have a hands-on approach with you, but it's very important that you develop a system of accountability. And that's my presentation. I appreciate the time, and I'll certainly be open to asking or answering any questions. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Maurice. That was such a full presentation. I have so much. I can't wait to rewatch it myself because I was listening, but also handling some things as I do have to slide off to work after your presentation. But I have a question from Athenia. Athenia wants to know that she spoke about the slide about the foods that we eat and the things that we grow up on. So she's mentioning that these are all foods that we grow up with in the Black family and community. What do you suggest? What are some of, I know I heard you just mentioned about kind of cutting back on beef and some of the things that we can put in our diet. But for when you're kind of like on that low, like kind of just learning or just hearing about these things for the first time, can you kind of speak to some of the easiest ways to kind of start to transition away from maybe, and I'm talking about the moms that maybe use a lot of hamburger help or rice-a-roni. They're looking for something quick, but what could be some quick and healthy options to replace some of those things?
Yeah, so I would definitely suggest, you have to build it in slowly. Making any abrupt changes, is going to throw your system into shock, right? So what I find that the biggest issue, especially within our society, is that we overconsume, right? When the issue that we have with obesity is one of energy excess, right? Too much calories in, not enough calories being burned, right? So the first thing that I say is, let's try to reduce portion size. We can start there, right? And one of the ways that I try to trick your mind into believing, because a lot of us fill our plates, right? We come from our family, we fill our plates. Well, how about we buy smaller plates? Get paper plates, buy smaller plates. Now you can fill that up, but by virtue, you're decreasing the amount that you're taking in. So slowly your body's getting adjusted, but mentally you're still filling your plate, right? Then we start to talk about altering foods, right? We should be consuming, I would say, 80% fresh produce. Okay. Now, most of us aren't doing that, right? Because we're taught to have bacon and eggs and toast and home fries for breakfast, right? So let's slowly incorporate, fruits into that, and as we introduce the fruits, we're cutting away something else that's on that plate. And then slowly, gradually, the overwhelming majority of our plate is going to be fresh produce by the end of it. Right. So it takes time. And trust me, I started this journey last year, and I'm still not fully vegetarian. Okay. So it takes time, because I grew up in a Black household where we ate, every part of the pig, so I get it, from a cultural standpoint. And this is why I said, the genes aren't the only things that we inherit. We inherit, our family's lifestyles, their behaviors, their diets, their coping mechanisms. And so it does take time. All right.
All right. And from Paul Fields Conyers asks, what's the executive order to regulate herbs and vitamins going to do to all of the theories in this presentation?
That's a great question. I think for them, regulation just means they want to find a way to tax it and make money on it. I do think there's gonna be you're still gonna have your traditional herbalists, who you will have access to. But yeah, this wanting to get a hold of the herbs, because they know how powerful they are. And I think the way society is going now, we're starting to want to get more into these natural therapies. So I know they're starting to feel a hit to their pockets, right? So now what you're going to start seeing is these pharmaceutical companies are going to start buying out nutraceutical companies and herbaceutical companies, right? They want to bring, because that's what the people want now, but you will have access to them. And I would suggest, hey, let's start learning how to grow it ourselves. I promote that more than anything. And you could do that in your home. I have an indoor garden. I bought some LED lights, and I'm a city boy. I'm from Philly. I'm from the concrete jungle. I don't know anything about plants and growing, but you start small, and I'm growing my own peppers and Genera procumbens here, which I highly suggest to everyone. A lot of you probably never heard of it. It's called longevity spinach, but lowers blood pressure, modulates your blood sugar levels, your cholesterol levels, anxiety. So it's anti-cancer, antiviral, and a whole number of things. And it tastes good. It actually tastes really good. So I would suggest we get into farming again. Growing our own herbs. Stop relying on, because we don't know what's in those foods. They can tell us anything. We don't know, so we grow our
And we
own.
also, I'm also a believer of we don't know what's to come with so many industries failing, so many things falling apart, and systems just changing and shifting. We have no idea what's to come in the next 20 to 30 years, so 50 years. So to start preparing ourselves and the ones that are going to come after us,
Right.
invaluable.
Right.
So
right. Exactly. Yeah. And look what inflation has done to, regular groceries. Right. It's crazy. It's crazy. What, $8 for eggs? Now I'm like, maybe that's telling us we shouldn't be eating eggs anyway. But I get it. I get it. It's like not everybody can afford this.
It's so much time spent on memes and joking things away that I think the seriousness of this matter and this conversation is missed a lot of times by society and by the community. Because some of the memes are hysterical about the prices, but the reality is that people are paying them and not necessarily doing the things that you're suggesting or stopping to look and say, what's the sustainability going to look like if this is where we are right now? Where does it look? What does this look like 20 and 30 years? And what would you have to be doing to actually be able to eat in this lifetime? Is what I wonder if people hear, because
I've been able to do. I lost you a little bit. Can you hear me?
There we go. I can hear you now. It's pausing a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, and to your point, I've done a fair amount of traveling of recent, and I think this is the only place that I've gone to, and mostly underdeveloped countries. The only place I've gone to where fast food is cheaper than produce. Like they're telling you that they're incentivizing eating unhealthy foods, and truthfully, yes, this might be the conspiracies in me, but that's done intentionally. They want us sick because they want us dependent on their medications. They want our money. They want that money. There's no money in people being healthy, right? And there's no money in developing a cure, right? Chris Rock said that. There's no money in the cure. The money's in the medicine, right? So it makes sense that they would make things that ultimately kill us more convenient and accessible.
One more question we have: is the Mediterranean diet a healthier lifestyle for eating? From Sister Kathleen Greeley.
It is. Actually, they just came out with a report and they listed all the world's diets, and the Mediterranean was the top. Because if you look at it, the Mediterranean diet is a more plant-based diet. And if they get, it's heavy in fish too, and fish is acidic. It's not as acidic as it's not as acid forming as, say, like red meat, but it is acid forming. But their fish is of so much better quality in those areas than the fish that we receive, the farm fish that we receive. So it's definitely a much healthier diet, and all the data shows us that. And it's essentially because it's a far greater alkaline forming diet.
Gotcha. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So before we depart, I know that I wrote down that we should be eliminating toxic thoughts, words, eliminating poor sleep habits, the toxic foods, and the things that you shared that fall under those as well. We are engaging, partnering, knowing, creating, and developing. And I don't know if you folks caught that, but I missed the name of it. But I wrote down longevity spinach because it was the first time I've ever heard of that. So I'll definitely be looking that up. So if you didn't catch the name, just make sure that you look up longevity spinach, and also let the community know two things before you go today, please, Maurice. Could you let them know what services can they get from you? Like if they wanted to find and to develop, like do those things on that list of engaging. I know you said they can partner with you, which you would then help them create. Do you help them find accountability partners? Do you have groups within your pod? Just let everyone know everything that you offer to the community. And can you also let us know what Juneteenth means to you?
Sure. So yeah, you can you can set up a consultation or a formal visit from the website www.medirootz.com. That's MEDIROOTZ.com. And it could just be a general consultation. You don't necessarily have to become a formal patient. And I accept, well, actually, at the moment, I'm only accepting Medicaid and Medicare. But that doesn't mean that I can't see you anyway, so I'm not focused on getting that money up front. We can work out. I have my team work on the insurance issues, and we'll be able to eventually take whatever insurance that you have. So you could definitely schedule an appointment on the website. And as far as the services that we provide, so it's mainly just primary care services. So anything from managing chronic disease, preventative care, phlebotomy. Again, what we typically do is the first encounter is done virtually, and then we figure out exactly what needs to be done. If you need blood work done, if I feel it's necessary to come out and do a full physical, we'll do that. And then if you require other services, we can refer you to those services. I don't provide, mental health services, but I do have several providers that I work with. And we'll work depending on what fits within your schedule, price range, things like that. We'll put together essentially like a curriculum, a guide. Say, okay, you know what? I know this chiropractor that's good. This is their price point. Could you do this once a month? Can you afford to do that? Here's some videos that I like on, how to meditate, especially diaphragmatic breathing. I'm a big fan of diaphragmatic breathing, and it's meditative practice. Who I do know a couple Reiki experts, some yoga instructors, sound healers. I'm very big on sound healing. I even bought my own set of solfeggio bowls and tuning forks, it might be the placebo, but it works, it works, and with respect to Juneteenth, Juneteenth is everything about freedom, and I think we don't really grasp how powerful of a concept that is. I think a lot of us are walking around with this false sense of freedom, right? I talked about dependency. You're not free if you're dependent on anyone for anything, right? So Juneteenth to me is about independence, reclaiming our autonomy. And even though, you saw my background, I went to Hopkins and Drexel and Cornell, so I'm fully indoctrinated into this in the Western science. I like to joke that I'm blessed, I'm fortunate to have received such a prestigious miseducation, right? But I say that because there are many elements about our being, especially as divine beings, as spiritual beings, that Western science hasn't even begun to discuss. And this is why we fail to fully address our health issues. And so I think in order for us to get to the point of really optimizing our health and wellness, we have to reclaim our independence and our autonomy. We have to educate ourselves and seek out those who actually know, and not those who have the title and claim to be experts. All right. And so to me, that's what Juneteenth means. It's true liberation, it's true freedom, it's true independence.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us again. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you, Maurice.
I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. I hope you truly were able to get something from Dr. Hinson's presentation. I know I took a lot away with me today. So next week, we'll have Roger St. Louis. He'll be here talking about his career, technology. He's also in the medical field, and he'll also be sharing with us his journey on being a single dad, or his journey as a single dad, I should say. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks for being here with us. Don't forget that The vendors' Juneteenth registration links are all there and available, and we are still looking for vendors and artists and bands and all that good stuff. See you next time.
The last call, thinking that I know you're not sure. Make a long stop, ready or not. I see you, but I need to know more. What you wanna do? Cause I know we didn't dance, but I saw you watching on the dance floor. Maybe at the exit door, and maybe we could talk some more. Oh, yeah. You stand beside me. Oh, no. You're watching me, and I feel it. Greetings. Good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Welcome to another weekly Lunch and Learn.
In terms of business, if you have a dream, go for it. Pursue it. Work hard at it, because with anything that you want to do, it's going to come hard work. You know, if you don't put the hard work, if you don't put the time into it, it's not going to flourish the way you want to.
Maybe advice for anybody who's looking to start a business, like, just do it. Start off small and then kind of expand. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming, but like once you're in it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this long time ago?
Love you. Tell yourself, I love me too. I love you, Omena.
Love you. When you open your heart and your mind, you're opening up to your blessing.
Yeah.